Now, the second type of problem is I could ask you to graph and write the equation of a line if I give you the slope and I give you an intercept. So in this example here, I'm telling you that the slope is -2 and that it crosses the y-axis at 3. So I've given you a y-intercept. First thing you want to do is draw out a graph, and then you might want to plot some of those points there. So in this case, y-axis at 3, I have to find +3 on the y-axis. That's right over there. And now I'm going to write my equation of a line down with all the pieces that I know. So my equation is y equals -2x plus 3. I know about the -2 because that's given to me, so I didn't solve anything there. And now I have an equation that I can plug some numbers in to figure out where my other point goes on the graph. So I'd like to know a point on my x-axis. I think that'd be useful. So I'm going to plug in 0 for y and solve for x. And I'm going to skip ahead by doing all the algebra here for you. Okay, from using that information, I determined that 3/2 is equal to my x value for my x-intercept. So I have to find 3/2. You might need to do some math there. 3/2 is equal to 1.5. So I find 1, I find 1.5. That's my next point. And then you want to connect the lines, preferably with a ruler. All right, and the last example we're going to look at for this part of the equation of a line is if I give you 2 points that a line crosses through, and I ask you to graph and tell me what the equation of the line is. So in this case, I've got a line that goes through the points A and B. A is at -2, -1, and B is at 1, 7/2. So the first thing I have to do is plot those points. Let's put those on the graph, just like that. So A is pretty simple. I go 2 back, -2. On the x-axis, I go down 1 for my y-axis, so -2, -1. B is a bit trickier. I move 1 on the x-axis, that's easy, but 7/2, you have to determine that that's actually 3.5. So 7 divided by 2 is 3.5. Plot a point there. Then if you really want to, you can draw the line in. It's not really going to help in terms of solving, but you can draw it in. It looks a little bit nicer. There we are. Now if you're using graph paper, hopefully your lines and your graphs are not going to be freehand and rough like this. It'll give you a big clue as to what your equation of a line will be. Some of you might even have noticed that I've changed some of my increments on here just to make it look nice. But either way, we've drawn it in. We've got our points there. How can we determine the equation of a line? Well, remember, we spent so much time in our previous lesson or a couple lessons ago on calculating slope. That doesn't disappear. We can still calculate slope. Right? A big part of this whole pre-cal thing is being able to recall and using all the tools that are available to us. We can use m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We just choose one of these points to be, y2 and x2, and one of the points to be y1 and x1. So I'm just going to pick A to be my y2 and my x2, and then the other one to be my x1 and my y1. Let's plug those numbers in and solve for m. Okay, so the math. You just plug the numbers directly into it. -1 minus 3.5 over -2 minus 1. You end up with some weird fraction, -4.5 over -3. If you punch it into a calculator, you'll end up getting 1.5. So m is equal to 3/2. Where does that help us? Well, in terms of writing the equation down, remember y equals mx plus b, we know what m is now. So let's plug that in and see what that looks like. So we're switching to green for this part. We end up with 3/2 times x plus b is equal to y. You notice I put the x on top of the fraction. It doesn't really matter. It's the same thing either way. So showing you that both ways are possible. Now we're going to solve for b. How do we do that? Well, you could look at the graph. If you drew it nicely, you'll know what it is. If you didn't, you can use one of your points, for example, point A, plug a number in for y and for x, and it will give you the b value because that's your only variable remaining. So I'm going to plug in the numbers for A, which are -2 and -1, and then I'm going to solve for B, and I'll show you what that math looks like. All right, so y equals 3/2 times x plus b. So I plug my numbers in. -1 is equal to 3/2 times -2 plus b. 3/2 times -2, well, the 2's cancel out, and that negative hangs out with the 3. So -1 equals -3 plus b. Then I can add 3 to both sides of my equation. So I'm getting -1 plus 3 is equal to b, which means that my b value ends up being 2. And why is that special for us? Well, I have an m value, I have a b value. That's all I need for my equation. So therefore my equation is y equals 3/2 x plus 2. Now, You're going to want to do a lot of practice for this. I'll give some of that to you. This is, like I mentioned, the bulk of the course is these linear equations and such. So we'll spend some time on that. I'll give you some practice that you'll see somewhere over here on the board. Spend some time with that. I'm going to probably throw another lesson up this week for you as well. So it's going to be heavy, I'm sorry, but I think if this stuff is coming at you fast, you're more likely to stick with it and connect to like the main topics for this course. So we'll move into the next topic. I don't remember what it was, but we'll get to that a little bit later in the week. And if anything comes up, as always, let me know. We'll take it from there. Have a good one.